Hello, my name's David Hawkins. I'm director and founder at the University Guys. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today, but I'm here to talk to you a little bit about your options at international universities. The University Guys is a team of specialist consultants who work for families to support their students with applications to universities all over the world. Specifically for those of you at school in the UK, we would be supporting with applications to places like the United States, Canada, options in Europe, and indeed further afield. And just a little sample here on the screen of places where the students we've been working with in the 2022-2023 application cycle have already gained offers, both students from the UK going outside the UK and international students that we've supported with their applications to come to the UK. Now, what I'm going to talk about today is a university experience beyond the UK that can potentially be very different from what you might be used to here in the UK. Going to a university in a different country is not like picking up a UK university and dropping it somewhere else. It can potentially be a completely different experience of what university is. And at the University Guys, we have an analogy to try and help you understand that. And the analogy is to use the word football. If I went down the road to the train station just near your school and stopped the first person I came across and said, "Hey, what's football?" they would answer, describing normally a game where you kick the round ball towards a goal and we get scores like 1-0, 2-1, 3-1. If I, however, was in New York City and came out of Penn Station and said to the first person I found the exact same words, "Hey, what's football?" because I was in a different country, I would get a different answer. Your understanding of the word football is different depending where in the world you are. Same for Gaelic football in Ireland, same for Australian rules football. And that analogy is there to demonstrate that it's true also for university. When we start to delve into universities in other parts of the world, how we think of university, what we do at university, and crucially for you guys now, how you apply to university is going to be different. And there are a number of key things that are going to be different from the UK experience that we have to start to get our head around. The 4 points on the screen I will talk through in turn to give you an overview of some key elements with international universities that you're going to have to start to consider. Now, the first one you're going to have to start to think about is how you choose where to apply. In the UK, we have two bits of information that allow us to really not spend much time compared to in other countries picking our shortlist of universities. The first bit of information is the course you want to study. Chemistry or business or medieval French or law, whatever it might be, but we have a defined course of study. And for every course of study, we can also then find the second bit of information, which are the entry requirements. What grades in what subjects must I be predicted at A level to get a place on that course, or at least to be a realistic applicant to that course? Those two bits of data mean that actually we've got a filter that allows us to go from the thousands and thousands of university courses down to maybe 10, 15, 20 that match your subject and the grades that you're likely to achieve. Now, other countries are not going to make it that simple. Either they don't have entry requirements or you don't apply for a course. And in the case of the United States, we have neither of those things, no entry requirements, no course-based application. So you're going to have a much deeper and more extensive process to pick a university than we're typically used to doing in the UK. Being honest, a lot of students don't invest the right amount of time in building their international university shortlist because they don't think they need to do it for the UK. So why would I do it for other countries? But you're going to have to consider different questions. If we're looking, for example, at the United States, it's going to be about the experience of being a student at each university rather than really the course you're going to study. Why? You're not going to study a single course. You are just admitted to the university, or in some places, a particular part of a university. And so that day in, day out experience, both academically and socially, is really the crucial bit. If, for example, you're looking at New York University, I have the picture on the screen now, that is a very urban university in a very diverse city. When you apply to NYU, they're asking a question at the moment, asking you to explain your diverse background and how you might bring that to New York University. That's a very different experience from the photo in the middle of the screen here, Dartmouth College in upstate New Hampshire. it's very isolated. It's a small town surrounded by mountains and hills. And so that experience is going to be a very different one, and one that Dartmouth test in their admissions process by asking students to provide a reference written by somebody they consider to be a peer, a friend of theirs, someone in their year group or that they do an activity with, because they need to know that you're a good community member. The third university here, that's the American football team from the University of California, Los Angeles. Now, that's a huge public university on the west coast of the United States. When you apply to that system, there are no references that you send at all. It's a large university. Students need to be very independent to navigate it successfully, and that application procedure is going to reflect independence. So very different, very interesting processes that students are going to have to consider, different questions you have to answer when building your university shortlist. And that will extend to other areas as well. Most universities in the UK are what we call comprehensive. That means that you are going to be studying one subject, but at a university that offers lots of subjects. So you can go to Bristol or Edinburgh or UCL, and there are massive numbers of courses at those universities. And what it means is that the experience, both in terms of the social life and your accommodation, is very much focused on the undergraduate experience, what it's like to be there age 19, 20, 21, 22. But around the world, we have a lot of specialized universities that are going to feel very different. Universities that only offer business or only offer engineering. Yes, art schools, music schools, drama schools like we're used to in the UK. But places which actually might have a relatively small number of undergraduates, but a large number of postgraduates. The famous US university Caltech is a great example of this. Caltech only brings in around 250 new undergraduates each year. It's got a huge number of postgraduate students doing master's degrees, doing doctoral degrees, and people doing their own research. Now, the social life and the accommodation there is going to be much more leaning to the experience of people in their late 20s, their 30s, and their 40s than it really is going to be on those younger students. And if you're going to a university that, say, specializes in business, well, you might be expected to wear slightly smarter clothes than if you were just going to a comprehensive university. So again, different things to experience there. You're going to have to start to consider whether you want a residential university experience. The bullet points on the screen now will show you that in the UK, we have a very unusually high proportion of people who go away from home for university. That is not the case in many other parts of the world. Indeed, in continental Europe, the public universities will typically not provide anywhere for you to live. They won't be running sports teams. They won't be having debating societies or orchestras or those kind of things. It's a very different conception of the university experience. And you need to think, well, is that residential experience really important to me or kind of irrelevant to you when you're starting to build your university plans? And then when we're considering international universities, we can't get away from the financial aspects. You need to have the conversation with whoever it is who funds your life about what funds have you got to spend on going to university outside of the UK. Unless you happen to be from the Channel Islands, your student loan is not portable outside of the UK. So that money you can borrow from student loans company is only there to fund a UK university. So if you can't fund it yourself, what else is out there? Well, you might have certain passports or residencies that could open up different options. If you have an EU passport, that will make options like the Netherlands, for example, really cheap, about 5,200 euros in total cost of tuition for a 3-year degree in the Netherlands for anyone with an EU passport. Maybe you have a French passport. Did you know there's a great deal to go and study in Quebec, in Canada, for degrees taught in English for not much money? But if those things, the passports and the residencies don't work for you, then you're going to look to get money from the university. And you need to understand, is this a university that offers money to international students? Many don't. So don't just assume that everywhere has money. And if it does, is that money need-based? The Ivy League, for example, don't offer any scholarships. They only offer need-based aid, what we might call a bursary. And so you need to check whether you put in your family income, your family assets, are you going to actually get the kind of money that you think you need? And if that's not the route, then you need to look at merit scholarships where you get money for being good in the eyes of the university. And this is a really crucial bit to get right. I do encourage everybody listening today to have this conversation because this could be where it stops. It's just not financially realistic for you to go to university outside of the UK. Now, the second difference is going to be the academics, that what you study will potentially work very differently as well. In the UK, we have this idea of going to university to study a subject, and that does happen in many other parts of the world. But we also see that there are different models of how your academics at university work as well. You'll hear this term, the liberal arts and sciences, used a lot. It doesn't really mean the same as the liberal arts does in the UK. It's a different conception of going to university. In the UK, our degrees are all the same subject, or potentially a joint honours course, maybe a triple thing like you might find in Scotland. But you were admitted to that course, and that is the course you follow because you applied to the subject. In the liberal arts and sciences, which is really in effect how the entire United States system works, you are admitted to the community, either the overall college or a college within a university, where you're going to study a much broader range of subjects. Typically, a third of your degree would be your major, and that would be something you would pick in your second year normally. A third of what you study will be stuff the university forces you to take. Now, in most universities, that's going to involve you taking English, foreign language, maths, sciences, humanities, the arts, social sciences, and in some cases, physical education. That's not a nice to have. It is compulsory. Even if you're majoring in history, you will still take classes in maths and science. You're majoring in maths, you will be taking classes in the arts, humanities, and languages. The final third is your free choice, just a bunch of interesting elective classes, maybe try and double major, maybe pick up a minor. It's a completely different conception of how your university experience works. We've got to understand that even within different pathways, we're going to find nuance within there. So within the United States, it's not the case that every university is offering the same curriculum. I brought out Harvard, Brown, Columbia, and the University of Pennsylvania here. And each of those curriculums is also going to be quite different from each other. So more time invested in actually what will I study at each university and within each system. There's a halfway between those two options. We've got, for example, in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, somewhere where you're not applying for everything the university offers. You're not applying for a defined single or joint honours. We're applying for a broader area of study. So if you wanted to go to, say, McGill in Canada to study history, you're applying for Bachelor of Arts. Same as if you want to go and study English, same if you want to do modern languages, it's all Bachelor of Arts, typically a general first year program, and then specialism from year 2 onwards, and the same for all the other areas of study you can see on the screen now. If we come back to continental Europe, we'll find that we see the same subjects perhaps taught at different types of university. Europe has retained what the UK got rid of a number of years ago, the difference between a theory-based research university experience and a practical applied university experience, without really that potential snobbery that sometimes the UK might have had about the polytechnics. Very well regarded, different courses taught at different places, both leading on to master's degrees, both leading on to pretty well-paid careers. And if you're stepping out into other places, for example, going out to Asia, you'll find a range of different options there, reflecting the educational culture of that country. That liberal arts and sciences model is spreading around the world. Interesting pathways to look at that. Someone like WASTO in Tokyo, Ashoka in India, NYU's campus in Abu Dhabi. So really interesting ways in which you can experience different parts of the world. And if you really do have that bug to travel and see the world, there are global rotation degrees where you can travel the world as part of your undergraduate experience. For example, the World Bachelor in Business is a partnership between the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and Bocconi University in Milan, where over the 4 years of your degree, you study at 3 different universities on 3 different continents. And there are lots of options like this. Universities which have partnered up where you spend 2 years on one campus, 2 years in another, and Minerva University, where you spend you go to 7 different world cities over the course of your 4-year degree. So really different conceptions of how your studies will work. I also just will chuck in here, because I don't have anywhere else to put it, if you were considering the Southern Hemisphere, for example, Australia or New Zealand, bear in mind that their academic year is flipped on ours because of when their summer is in our winter. Their academic year tends to run February to November. So if you were finishing school in June or July, getting your exam results in August, you would then, after that, apply to university to start in the February after you have finished at school. Third of my 4 differences is how we assess the quality of a university. What makes a university good? And here this stuff can very much get lost in translation. Terms like the Ivy League are used more often inaccurately than they are accurately, and things like entry requirements are so built into our system in the UK when we're starting to think about this idea of good. The Ivy League are not the best state universities in America. There's a clue in the word league to tell you that it's a sports competition of 8 very good US universities, but they're not the 8 most selective, they're not the 8 most prestigious, and they're not the 8 highest ranked. They're all prestigious and selective and highly ranked, but this year at the moment, Columbia is ranked 18th in the United States, which gives you a sense of the fact that places like Stanford and MIT and Duke, which are not in the Ivy League, are also very hard places to get into. But what we've got to start to get our head around is the different scale of the different processes. For example, when we look at the United States, we have to bear in mind the number of students there is significantly bigger than we find in the UK. Right now, in the year group, each year group at high school in America, we've got about 4.3 million students. Now, that's a massive number of students leaving school each year. So when you start to think, well, how am I as a good student competing? What we've got to understand is that some of these universities are also very tiny. Around 20,000 students are coming out of high schools in America each year with a perfect SAT score. And places like Yale and Stanford and Harvard are taking fewer than 2,000 students each year. It's not the case of, well, maybe I'm not quite looking at Oxford and Cambridge, but hey, I'll look at the Ivy Leagues or universities like it. It's the other way around. It might scare you to find out that if you put Oxford and Cambridge in the United States, they would not make a list of the top 50 most selective universities. We are talking about a level of selectivity off the charts. But if we flip it around the other way to somewhere smaller, like, for example, the Republic Island, with only around 70,000 students, very few universities, and each year around a quarter of all students in Ireland will submit an application to Trinity College in Dublin. Those universities in Europe, which have a very different model of the experience, will also have a very different model of selection. This is KU Leuven, a world-class top 50 university in Belgium. They offered 5 degrees in English, and 3 Cs at A-level will get you in. And that might, to a British mindset, make people think, well, it can't be very good if it only asks for 3 Cs. Well, it's a different model. It's not selection at the gate to enter the university. You get in with relatively minimal requirements. Selection after the gate from year 1 to year 2. So the university like this, like many public universities in continental Europe, the bar to stay after the first year can be quite high, potentially up to maybe you have to get 80% in your first year exams to stay, a different model. Those specialized universities I mentioned earlier are going to be selecting you for your aptitude for their specialism. You wouldn't expect an art school in the UK to admit a student who didn't have talent in art. Well, the universities that have those specialisms will be looking for students who have the aptitude in whatever their specialism is. For example, here, the École Hôtelière de Lausanne, the #1 hospitality management university in the world, and they are going to be looking for students who have that soft skills, those people skills, that have the right aptitude for a career in hospitality. You might have 3 A stars and they might say no. You might have 2 Bs and a C and they might say yes, depending on your aptitude for that specialism. And then the last of my 4 points as I wrap things up is that the applications don't work like UCAS. There are very few countries which have such a streamlined process like the UK. You don't apply to international universities on UCAS, and these don't replace one of your UCAS choices. These are in addition. And what you'll find is that different countries are going to make you use different systems, potentially in places like the USA and Canada. You're going to have to use different systems within that same country. You're going to maybe have to apply directly to some universities, and that direct application is fairly common in European pathways. You're going to have different logins, different passwords, different deadlines, different paperwork you're going to have to do. Some of these processes are very involved. If you are, for example, looking at the United States, you really have a lot to do. There's lots of moving parts of the application you have to go through. Some of them are relatively straightforward. If you, for example, applying to Canada, it's like doing a UCAS application, but without having to do any writing whatsoever. If we're going to the USA, bear in mind again that the writing is significant because it's not your match for a subject, but your match for a community. That experience that you're going to have is going to be reflected by the stories that you write. You have to write 1 650 words general essay, not about your love of a subject, but who you are as a person. And on top of that, potentially multiple application essays for each university. If we come back towards Europe, this idea of having the minimum entry requirements, it's not going to be necessarily about having strong grades, but about being eligible. Have you taken the right A-levels? For example, if you want to study business at most public universities in Europe, you'd better be taking maths in the 6th form. If you're not, doesn't matter how many A stars you've got, you're probably going to struggle to be eligible for courses like that. And we have more nuances like the matching procedure that we have in Ireland, things like numerus fixus and numerus clausus in places like Germany and the Netherlands that make it more tricky. Now, that was a very big whistle-stop tour through lots of international destinations. Our website, theuniversityguys.com, is freely available to you to browse, to look up for blogs, webinars, podcasts on international university topics. If you are looking for some specialist help, my team is available to support you. It's a service like private music lessons that people can contract us to provide and pay for. Our three-step process is designed to help you navigate all these different elements of the process. And if you would like to get in touch, please contact me via david@theuniversityguys.com. Thank you very much for your attention.